Now, the International Committee of the Red Cross has announced that it received 132 wounded near aid distribution sites in Palestinian Rafah in southern Gaza. Since the establishment of these centers, the ICRC has treated over 3,400 injured and recorded 250 deaths. The ICRC described the situation in Gaza as unacceptable, with civilians enduring horrific conditions. At least 10 people were killed after an Israeli airstrike hit a water distribution center in Gaza, deepening an already dire water crisis in the besieged territory. Most of Gaza City is now without running water, with municipal authorities saying ongoing attacks and unsafe conditions prevent repairs, mains and wells. The near-total fuel blockade since March 2nd is threatening to shut down desalination plants, sewage systems and water delivery trucks, possibly cutting off the last sources of clean water. Meanwhile, Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has sharply criticized the government's plan to turn Rafah into a humanitarian city, as they call it, for Gaza's population, calling it a costly and dangerous political maneuver to appease far-right coalition partners. Lapid argued that the $4.5 billion earmarked for the project would be better spent on easing the financial burden on Israeli citizens by improving education, public transportation and childcare services. He called for an end to the war and the return of Israeli detainees, rather than pursuing what he views as costly and politically motivated plans. Fishermen in Gaza expressed alarm after the Israeli military reiterated a total ban on fishing, swimming and diving off the enclave's coast. Despite the renewed warning, many say they have no choice but to continue fishing, calling the restrictions a real catastrophe in the face of mounting hunger. The renewed ban comes as famine fears escalate in Gaza. A May report by the IPC projected nearly 500,000 people could face catastrophic hunger by September. An Anwar clinic in Gaza has reported a sharp rise in malnutrition cases since March, when Israel tightened its siege and blocked all humanitarian aid to the agency. In a statement on X, Anwar said no aid deliveries have been allowed in since then, severely limiting access to essential medical and nutritional supplies. Despite the shortage, Anwar teams continue critical work on the ground, focusing on vulnerable groups, including children, through nutritional assessments and basic care. UN agencies have said the fuel crisis in Gaza has reached a critical point, placing the lives of 2.1 million residents in jeopardy and threatening to halt all humanitarian efforts. Fuel is the backbone of survival in Gaza, the statement read, warning that without it, hospitals, water systems, bakeries and ambulances will cease functioning. Neonatal and intensive care units are already failing and ambulance services have been crippled. While a small delivery of 75,000 litres was allowed in this week, the first in 130 days, agencies say it falls short of daily needs. The UN reiterated its call for sustained fuel deliveries and unimpeded humanitarian access, warning that without immediate action, Gaza's humanitarian system is on the verge of total collapse. The Euromed Human Rights Monitor has called for US President Donald Trump to face prosecution for complicity in genocide over his support for the GHF aid distribution system in Gaza, where hundreds of Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces. In a statement, the Geneva-based group urged international bodies to hold Trump accountable, citing testimony suggesting involvement of US private security contractors and Israeli soldiers in attacks on civilians at aid sites that began operating in late May. The group also accused Trump's administration of providing broad military, financial and diplomatic support to Israel's ongoing war in Gaza. The British consulate in Jerusalem has condemned the recent killing of 2 Palestinians in the West Bank by Israeli settlers, calling for accountability. In a post on X, the consulate said extremist settlers face no consequences for their actions. On Friday, settlers beat 20-year-old US citizen Sayfullah Musalat to death and fatally shot Mohammed Shalabi north of Ramallah. Since 2022, Israeli forces have killed at least 9 US citizens, including journalist Shireen Abu Akleh.